Today I'll be talking about autism. Stand up if you've been in class with at least one autistic person. That proves the fact that there's autistic people all around us. Now, you may be seated. From a government website called the Center for Disease and Prevention, providing data statistics about the autism spectrum disorder, 1 in 59 children are diagnosed with autism. That's roughly 17% of the world's population. There is at least one autistic person in every class. Today, I will talk about autism. It's important to celebrate our differences, and you should know why everyone's different, and you'll know how this condition affects our lives. And by the end of my speech, you'll know how this condition affects our lives and why everyone is different. I have high-functioning autism myself. I struggle with communication and interactions. Now I want to inform people about autism through this informative speech. Throughout my speech, I will talk about the definition of autism, the history behind autism, and the awareness of autism. Off to the next slide about the general information about autism. In an academic journal called How Parents Reported Early Symptoms of Autism in Kids Without Intellectual Disability Who Were Diagnosed at School Age by A. Goodwin and Emma Matthews, autism is a developmental disorder that affects the nervous system that causes repetitive behavior, slows down communication, and may cause problems in intelligence. Most kids are not diagnosed until they're in school, though. Those who are diagnosed late usually have better level skills than those who are diagnosed early. Just because you're struggling in language does not mean you have autism, but it is a symptom. Oh, and there's no cure for autism, but there's better ways to find treatments for this condition. Now that I talked about the general information about autism, let's talk about the history of autism. In the last slide, we talked about autism, but that's the stuff that modern people know about. It wasn't like that in the very beginning. In a periodical called The Autism in the Early America by J. Devon and Z. Sucker, it talked about Billy, who lived in Massachusetts in 1846. People questioned it about his odd behavior because his speech was very limited and his interactions were wonky. He was labeled as weird. In today's society, he falls under the autism spectrum disorder. Unfortunately, Billy was not around when child psychiatrist Leo Kenner in 1943 found the earliest forms of autism. He observed 11 children with odd behavior. He first used the term autism. High-functioning autism, also known as Asperger's syndrome, was named after a Vietnamese pediatrician named Hans Asperger. He described this disability in the 1940s when he observed autistic-like behavior in children with normal levels of development. It is considered a mild form of autism since children with an IQ of 7 or higher want to make interactions but don't know how to do it. The history of autism is very interesting, and I think you guys should know more about it. Now that we talked about the history of autism, let's talk about autism awareness. What is autism awareness, you may ask? Autism awareness is the attitude towards autistic people. In an academic journal called Autism Awareness in Children and Young People, Surveys in Two Populations by K. Delmer and J. Jordan, it talked about a study in order to assess autism awareness in young people. The kids' life and time survey was administered for 11-year-olds, and the young's life and time survey was administered for 16-year-olds. A total of 3,353 young people took part in one of the surveys. 80% of the teens that completed the surveys had more autism awareness than 50% of the children that also completed the surveys. Kids, teens of all young ages that know what sensible autism is are usually more positive and supportive towards those who are autistic and are willing to stand up to them if they ever get bullied. Autism is a common disorder and it's normal to have it. Hey, I'm about to wrap up my speech, but I want to summarize what I just said in summarized formation. Autism is a developmental disorder that affects the nervous system, as it also affects your socialization skills. Hans Asperger discovered Asperger's syndrome, or he was named after it. Autism awareness is the attitude towards autistic people. Now, here's a quote I want to share to the class by Dr. Seuss. Why fit in when you were born a Santa?